Pam Bondi sets the perfect trap. Gavin Nome's empire collapses. It was an early morning in Washington, D.C. The kind of morning when tension hangs as thick as the humid air over a cracked concrete landscape. Inside a cavernous courtroom, every seat was filled with reporters, legal experts, and curious onlookers, all silently waiting for the moment when truth would shatter long-held illusions. The fluorescent lights above were unyielding, exposing every nervous twitch, every determined gaze. At the center of it all stood Pam Bondi, former Attorney General of Florida, and now a relentless force in the fight for justice. Her reputation for precision and unflinching accountability had led her to this defining moment. Nome's eyes, once confident and full of ambition, now flickered with traces of anxiety. The atmosphere in the room was unnervingly heavy, not the calm silence of contemplation, but the buzzing anticipation just before a storm breaks. Pam Bondi stepped up to the podium with a measured, unyielding stride. In her hand, she clutched a thick manila folder filled with damning evidence. The room, already tight with expectancy, seemed to hold its breath as she began. "Your Honor, members of the court," she declared, her voice calm yet steely. "Today we confront a scandal of unprecedented proportions, a $33 billion embezzlement scheme tied directly to California's high-speed rail project. We have uncovered evidence that not a single mile of track was laid, yet billions were allocated. And at the center of it all is Governor Gavin Nome." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Reporters' pens scratched furiously, and digital cameras captured every flicker of expression. Outside, news vans and protesters swarmed the perimeter, their presence a testament to the gravity of the revelations about to unfold. Pam Bondi opened the folder slowly, deliberately, allowing every page of evidence to build the tension. "Exhibit," she announced, tapping on a document that displayed financial figures, bank transfers, and travel logs. In 2021, funds amounting to $33 billion were allocated to high-speed rail initiatives. Yet when you look at the construction sites in California, all you see is a graveyard of broken promises, rusting steel beams jutting from barren fields, yellow caution tape fluttering in the wind, and no progress whatsoever. Her eyes swept the room, and for a brief moment, the silence grew so heavy it felt as though the very air was charged with the weight of truth. The camera cut to a wide shot of the desolate construction site, a stark visual of what had been promised versus what had been delivered. Black SUVs were seen rolling onto the site, but instead of bustling workers and the hum of machinery, the area was eerily quiet, a skeleton of a project. The juxtaposition was painful. Billions in federal funds vanished in a thin air, leaving behind only the bitter taste of corruption and betrayal. As Bondi moved to the next exhibit, the screen behind her lit up with a digital timeline. "Exhibit B," she stated, her voice rising slightly, shows a series of internal emails from the Department of Transportation. These emails, dated just days before critical funding approvals, reveal that key decisions were made without proper oversight. An email from your chief of staff explicitly read, "The president is aligned. Move forward on the Global Partnership Initiative." This wasn't a routine memo. It was a directive that set off a chain of transactions benefiting your family's network. A ripple of shock passed through the courtroom as the evidence painted a picture of deliberate coordination. Governor Nome shifted in his seat, adjusting his tie, a habitual gesture that today appeared forced, almost rehearsed. His legal team exchanged anxious glances. It was clear that his carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble under the weight of Pam Bondi's evidence. In a dramatic, almost cinematic moment, Bondi continued. "Exhibit C reveals that while you publicly champion anti-corruption, internal documents show that during your tenure, funds were funneled to shell companies with no legitimate operations. These companies, with non-existent offices and no employees, received millions in payouts. One document even shows that your family's trust benefited from over $700 million in a series of staggered payments over a decade." Her voice was quiet, but each word hit like a sledgehammer, resonating with the kind of fury that comes from a deep betrayal of public trust. As the evidence piled up, the tension in the courtroom became almost unbearable. Outside, protesters began gathering, holding signs that read "No more empire" and "Justice for the people." Social media erupted with hashtags like hashtag Empire Exposed, hashtag DOJ Accountability, and hashtag Genome Down. The nation was watching, and every eye was fixed on the unfolding drama. Then came the turning point, the moment when the silence in the room transformed into a roar of revelation. Bondi's final exhibit was perhaps the most damning. A digital timeline showing the precise alignment between policy announcements, official trips, and the exact times when money was wired to questionable contractors. Every transaction, every flight, every contract was timed to coincide with key moments in your political career, Bondi said, her voice rising with righteous indignation. This is not coincidence. It is a meticulously orchestrated scheme to use public funds for private gain. And it goes beyond Hunter Biden's business dealings. It is about the very essence of accountability. The courtroom fell silent once again as her words hung in the air. President Biden, who had maintained a veneer of calm throughout the proceedings, now looked directly at Bondi, his expression unreadable. For a long moment, there was nothing but the heavy beat of silence, each person in the room collectively holding their breath. Then, with a voice that cut through the stillness, Bondi delivered her closing statement. "We are not here to engage in partisan bickering," she declared, "but to demand that no one, regardless of their power or political affiliation, is allowed to operate above the law." Today, the evidence is undeniable. The system has been manipulated and accountability has been suppressed. It is time to restore the integrity of our government and ensure that every public official is held to the same standard. Governor Noem, you have built an empire on deceit, and now the American people will no longer be deceived. Her words echoed like a battle cry through the courtroom. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled down every syllable. Outside, the roar of protest mingled with the hum of breaking news. The digital timeline, the spreadsheets, the internal emails, all served as a testament to the systematic abuse of power that had now been laid bare. As the session ended, the tension was palpable, a nation on the brink, divided yet united in its demand for transparency and justice. In the quiet that followed, Bondi's resolve remained unshaken. Later that evening, as the headlines screamed and social media exploded with reaction videos, she sat alone in her office, reviewing the evidence one final time. "We've only just begun," she murmured to herself. "This is not just about one corrupt governor. It's about an entire system that must be reformed." The next morning, the fallout continued. Protests erupted in cities across the country. Congressional hearings were scheduled, and a bipartisan call for reform started to echo through the halls of government. In boardrooms, classrooms, and living rooms, people debated whether the rules truly applied equally to everyone or if the powerful enjoyed a dangerous level of immunity. Pam Bondi's bold actions had ignited a firestorm, a national conversation about accountability that could not be silenced. If this story moves you, share it with someone who believes that no one is above the law. Subscribe for more real stories that cut through the noise and reveal what true courage looks like when the stakes are highest.